Says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Don't worry about it. I got this day. And I'm telling you what transformation for this.
I think they said it take longer for set.
A pleasant evening to all, and welcome to yet another week of the Ocho Rios Circuit of Baptist Churches Youth Forum. I trust that this will be an informative session as we will be discussing vulnerabilities faced by youth and how we as youth may identify them, as well as how we may protect ourselves from them and how others around us can protect us from these vulnerabilities. Please don't hesitate to send in your questions as we will facilitate them in a section of this program. We'll now listen to a song as we prepare our hearts for prayer. Please bow your heads while I pray. Most righteous and eternal Father, Lord, we thank you. We thank you for everything that you have done, for everything that you are doing, and for everything that you will do. We thank you for life, for health, for strength, for food, for family, for friends, for everything that you have done, seen and unseen. Lord, we thank you for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And as we continue with this evening's proceedings, we leave everything in your hands. Lord, we pray for your guidance and protection and pray that we may never forget nor neglect you as you have never forgotten or neglected us. These and other mercies we ask in your most righteous and holy name we pray. Amen. Today, we have with us a very special guest hailing from the Mona Baptist Church. Dr. Irons Morgan is a consultant psychiatrist who retired as Director of Mental Health and Substance Abuse in the Ministry of Health 3 years ago. She's a child of God by His grace and a member of the Mona Baptist Church. So let us all welcome her now. Thank you for coming, Dr. Irons. We hand over to you.
Hi. Can you hear me now? Good evening, everyone. Hello?
Good evening, Dr. Anne
Oh,
Morgan. How are
okay,
you?
all on there. Great. All right. Hey. Wow. First of all, thank you for inviting me to share with you on this occasion, your youth forum. I'm already so impressed to see so many young people willing to join in a youth forum at this time. And just want to thank you for inviting me, Sister Loy and the team and Onelia and Pastor and everyone. Thank you. And congratulations on your youth forum. All right, so I'm sorry, just 1 second. I'm trying to get the screen to share.
Oh, yes, we're seeing the screen, Dr. Morgan.
Good now? All right, yes. Thanks. So is that Anila who gave me the introduction?
Yes, I gave the introduction.
Okay.
Ashley
Right.
Davis.
Right. Thank you. All right. So we're talking about vulnerabilities faced by youth. And uh, Onelia, is it Onelia? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
Yes, it's
Yes.
Onelia.
Onelia. Okay. Thank
Yes.
you.
And
Onelia
Ashley is
wrote
also
me,
here
and
leading
she
evenings forum.
yeah, she indicated a lot of different issues that she would like to be covered. So I try to just kind of throw in things, but in truth and in fact, I would really like for this to be interactive. And I gather, Nelia, that you would ask them to send in questions if it's possible and they can be allowed to speak. That would be good too. Because I just want to be sure that you're kind of, you're getting what it is that you would like to know. All right.
Yes, of course. We would definitely like for everyone to send in questions, whatever is on their mind, whatever comes from the presentation. We definitely want your questions.
So I made up the story of a young girl, kind of just to start the discussion going, So I said, this girl's name is Abigail, and it's a fictional Abigail, and she's a student at Mount Nazarene High School. I don't know if there's such a place in Jamaica, and she attends the Mount Nazarene Baptist Church. She's the first of 5 children from a working class family, meaning that her parents are working to survive and they live from paycheck to paycheck, basically. She lives with both parents, 4 siblings, and her grandmother. Her father is a fairly good provider, but emotionally, he is distant, meaning he's not warm to them. He never hugs them, never says, I love you, and things like that. Her mother doesn't seem to know how to talk to her about matters related to growing up. Her grandmother is harsh, demanding, and Abigail has a best friend. Her name is Junie, and Junie seems to be living an exciting life. She has her own money. She gets from her father who lives abroad. She buys a lot of nice, trendy clothes. She's always posting a lot of pictures in romantic settings with her boyfriend. And she often tells Abigail various details of her sexual encounters. Abigail wants to believe what she's taught in Sunday school about God's plan for sex. And she sometimes finds herself though imagining. I'm going to stop here, but the story doesn't necessarily end here. If anybody wants to add something to it as you go along, just to bring out a point, just to ask a question, that's fine. So, in considering this fictional person, Abigail, what are some of the vulnerabilities that we see here? Is there anyone who, can I get some answers, Anelio?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
From your friends,
good.
Those closest to you.
Yes.
The lack of emotional support from her parents.
Lack of emotional support from her parents, that will make her vulnerable. Yes. Anything else?
Does anyone else have anything to add?
By the way, this session is supposed to last at 1 hour? Or Anelio?
One hour.
Okay, great. All right, in the interest of time, we'll move along. But those are 2 very important points that were mentioned, peer pressure. And so I put first at the top of my list, though, yes, unmet emotional needs and psychosocial support and even physical needs. So these are some of the issues that young people may face, and it makes you vulnerable. It makes you vulnerable to getting into situations where these needs, which were not met as a child in your family, could be met in another situation, which may not be the ideal. So, for example, now Abigail, being someone who has not really experienced that emotional nurturing from her parents, might very well fall prey to getting that emotional nurturing from a situation with a boyfriend who might, want to take advantage of her, and other things would be involved. All right, physical needs also, maybe, a lot of, they might not have enough money to get the stuff that she needs, food or whatever it is. What about spiritually? We said that she goes to a church, but one doesn't know how connected she is, how grounded she is, whether or not she has made a decision to become a Christian and what that means, and how much she has been encouraged to have friends who support her in terms of her Christian walk and, nurturing those beliefs, And you do know, I am sure, that the Bible says that bad company corrupts good character. So it's very important as young Christians to surround yourself, or certainly to have your best friend being somebody with a similar belief system who would support you, rather than, as we heard in the story, constantly feeding her with stories about the other person's sexual encounter, which even if she doesn't believe, over time, she becomes desensitized to the idea that it is wrong and might easily get involved that way. Family structure is another issue that we see that will affect children. Now, this child is a first of 5 siblings. We don't know, the details are not all given here, but it's possible that she, for example, may be in a position where she has added responsibility, and her family is not a very close one. The mother does not seem to exercise some amount of responsibility towards her in a way that you'd expect. According to the story, the mother doesn't know. And so that also may introduce some amount of vulnerability, lack of knowledge within the parental figures, but then the opportunity would be there to seek appropriate knowledge. Peer pressure, we definitely see as an issue, as somebody else pointed out. We do know that at this age group, in your younger years, what your friends believe is very, very important. People, as a part of your whole development, you want to be, your identity. This is a time of developing your own identity and being able to be a part of something. So, for example, you're a part of the Ocho Rios Baptist Church youth group, and young people want to be a part of something. They want to be accepted by others. And oftentimes they are tempted to do things that will make them seem acceptable and desirable. And especially, we find that in this age of social media, peer pressure is particularly important, because now it is not just being acceptable to your friends that you know, but it is the wider community of young people being able to display these pictures, which often, as you probably know, is just one side of the story. So people are always putting their best face on show. They don't show you the problems. So Abigail's friend, for example, might be showing all of the wonderful things, but she's not showing her some of the difficulties, some of the difficult issues that she's really dealing with. I see where Reverend Hemmings put his hand up. Would you take a question, Anelia?
Yes, you can take a question.
Are you able to see what Reverend Hemmings wanted to say?
Where? Can you unmute your mic?
I was just testing the device. I have not formulated my question yet.
Okay. All right. Well, it is very nice to know that you're under the watchful eyes of your pastor. Okay. Okay, right. All right. Then we consider personality issues. Now, one of the things that we'll find is that you know, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. Your personality is a way in which you have learned to relate to yourself and to others. It is something that develops in childhood going into teenage years. And your personality is pretty much developed by the time you're, say, 16, 18. And you'll find that some people might have a kind of personality where they probably are more dependent. Again, going back to those unmet needs, they may be very dependent on others and will often be vulnerable in terms of falling into relationships that foster that kind of dependency. And then there are different types of personalities. Some people might come out being more histrionic. Some people might come out being the kind that are wanting to take care of everybody, and different issues like that that might affect one's vulnerability. One of the things that was mentioned, where can you go to for help? I'm going to throw out some things, and I know that there are positives and negatives about each of them, but just to throw them out, and we could always discuss what are the positives and negatives. First of all, your parents and other family members is that's close and nearest to you. But having said so, we know that that's not necessarily the first persons that young people may go to. They often go to friends. And friends may be their own age group, who really might not know much more or anything different, and sometimes would encourage them in the wrong situation. And sometimes too, friends are sworn to secrecy in situations that might really need outside help. Then there are teachers. Some people manage to have, teachers with whom they can have that kind of conversation if something comes up and they need some assistance. Then there's your pastor. Then there are different church leaders and others. And I put one of the biggest source of information for most young people nowadays. Everybody know Mr. Google. They go to Google and find out information. Various mental health problems that I just want to mention that you may want to recognize that these can happen from time to time. We begin with the most common one, that is called anxiety. Now, everybody experiences anxiety from time to time. Anxiety is really a normal response to an abnormal situation. So if a situation arises in which one feels stressed, it is normal to feel anxious. For example, if you're having an exam tomorrow morning and you did not prepare for this exam adequately, and even if you did, you may have some amount of anxiety, right? If you are on a road and it's getting dark and you're alone and you're wondering if something could happen to you, you may experience some amount of anxiety. But anxiety can in fact become a mental health problem. It can be a disorder, and there are in fact several different types of anxiety disorders. Some of them I'm going to name out, and you might have heard some of these names. Panic disorder, for example, obsessive compulsive disorder, phobias, specific phobias. This is like an exaggerated fear of a situation or of a thing. A very common one we know, most ladies are afraid of lizards, for example. That's a phobia. Somebody might be afraid of heights. Somebody might be afraid of um, being in an elevator, which might be more of a claustrophobia. So you have specific phobias. Then there is social anxiety disorder. This is another fairly common one. Oftentimes I hear people say, I am very shy. I can't speak in public. Now, shyness and social anxiety disorder are really two different things. You can be just shy, but when you have social anxiety disorder, you feel so overwhelmed by anxiety that you feel like your heart is going to drop out if you're going to talk, and you might not be able to speak properly. You tend to avoid such situations, and you also feel afraid of being embarrassed. So young people will tell me they don't want to walk in front of others, at school because they feel everybody's looking at them. They can't even go and order food. They feel everybody's looking at them. That's social anxiety disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder, there's this perfectionism, sometimes tendency to be exact and to be excessively clean, or to sometimes have thoughts ruminating in your head. Then there's generalized anxiety disorder. So you see, lots of different anxiety disorders where you worry about everything. The sky's going to fall. You're going to get a disease and die. Something's going to happen to your parents. You just worry about everything. All right. So those are anxiety disorders. And I was saying anxiety can be normal, can be within normal, but it can be mild, moderate, or severe anxiety disorder. Depression, I'm sure you've heard of. That down feeling, the mood changes, and it is prolonged. Everybody gets sad from time to time, but depression is a prolonged changing of the mood to be sad or angry. And often you also have your appetite affected, your sleep affected, your energy, your outlook on life. People could be in such a negative mood that they feel like life is not worth living, and they have suicidal thoughts. The world will be better off without me. So they feel. Then there's what we call a group of illnesses that are called the psychoses, which means that you're out of touch with reality. And the most common one among this is what you call schizophrenia, which usually happens in late adolescent to young adulthood. And this now, the person really changes. There's just a personality change. The person begin to experience perceptions that are really not there, like they might hear voices, see things that are not there, and that emotional contact usually changes. And then we mentioned various personality disorders that people can have, which a lot of times we don't know about them. We don't mention them much, but there's a fairly common situation. I mean, anxiety, personality disorders are fairly common. And a lot of us would have heard about narcissistic personality, for example, as a lot of people are talking about a certain world leader with that personality recently. And this is people who think too highly of themselves, like they think of themselves almost as God. All right, so just give a little roundup about some of the mental health problems. Another question that asks, why do I feel like I need to be perfect? And a lot of times there may be pressure from parents, and there's pressure from the social media, which we mentioned, and intense self-criticism and pressure from oneself that can lead to depression, anxiety, and even suicidal behavior. How can adults help? First of all, adults can empathize. A lot of us as elderly people don't seem to remember when we were young, but trust me, we were young too. We had a lot of those issues. And so we ought to empathize. We should, you know, act like what we say, get knowledge when we need it. We should listen. Listening is a very, very important thing. As adults, we should not just listen with the intention to respond. And even young people too, you should listen with the intention to understand. So you do what you call active listening. You listen, you repeat, you ask, is this what you're saying? You try to understand. You can always pray with and for the young people. You can direct them out to get further help. Relationship is very, very important. People and young people, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that's very important. Onelia asks about finding happiness and purpose in life. I think it's important to become your best self, to know your worth, what God says about you. Always from you're a young person, I encourage you to pray and seek what is God's plan, because God does have a plan for you, which is the best plan. It's good to have people to whom you can be accountable. So that's why I say your closest friends should really be Christians so that they can keep you accountable. And it's good to recognize healthy boundaries. Boundaries are what help to keep out what is bad and to let in what is good. And it's good to get help when you need it, recognizing that help is not a sign of weakness. Getting help is a sign of strength. And it's good to be balanced. I want to, as we move towards the end, to talk about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, I find, is something that we don't speak about a lot, but is something that is absolutely necessary for us to, talk about. Our whole educational system, and even within our church, we tend to focus a lot on acquired knowledge, what you know, and even our examinations, the process of education, focus a lot on that. And a lot of times we ignore the emotional aspect of it. And emotional intelligence included one, self-awareness, being aware of yourself, who you are, how you feel, how you think, what are your vulnerabilities, what are your strengths. So what you're doing now is very good because this is helping, young people to think about that. Self-regulation, being able to manage your feelings is very important. One of the problems we see now in society is so much crime and violence. Part of it is inability of persons to regulate, to self-regulate. They get angry and they have to act out. They get a thought and they have to act on it. Motivation is important. What it is that motivates you, even when you don't feel like doing something. Empathy, we mentioned before, very important. Being able to feel what others are feeling, to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and to be able to respond. That's very important in developing healthy relationships and social skills, managing social interactions. All right, so some of the ways in which you can improve your emotional intelligence, just maintaining eye contact with somebody, for example, in your in different situations. Looking for facial cues. I see Reverend Hennings has put up his hand again. Notice a posture, being able to identify emotion, to recognize tone of voice, listen for understanding, respond with empathy. Yes, please, Onelia, could you take the question from Reverend Hemmings?
Yes, we'll take a question.
I have a few questions of my own if no one wants to go before me.
Go ahead. I mean, I'm not finished yet, but go ahead. This is a good time to
pressure
ask.
for me is a bit of a touchy topic. I've heard it so many times. She made me do this. Him made me do this. And then where XYZ happened. But I believe that everyone has a choice in the end. So someone may say something to you, but ultimately you have the choice to make. What do you think about this and my view? Because I don't really believe peer pressure is real because you need to learn to stand up for yourself.
You don't believe peer pressure is real?
I mean, it has some amount of influence on what you might say
Yes,
or
yes,
do, but
right.
you have to come to a decision on your own.
Okay, so what you are demonstrating is that you are very mature, and that is good, and that you you have developed to a large extent your sense of self, of who you are, and you take responsibility for your feelings and for your behavior. That's very good. Now, many people have not managed to do that yet as a young person and even as older persons, you know, and their personality might be such that they're very dependent, for example, on Ilya. Remember I said some people are very dependent. So they might have a great need to be approved of, for example, and they feel like they're not good enough and they need to, you know, be liked by this person. And so when this person comes along and say, you know, I want you to go so and so with me, you know, they're not sure if they want to go, but they would go because when they go, that person is going to, you know, give them some feedback emotionally that make them feel good. So I'm saying that it is good that you are in that situation, but the fact is that many people experience peer pressure and they are not able on their own to you know deal with it in this kind of way that you're dealing with it. But peer pressure can be very subtle or it can be overt. People could make suggestions to you without telling you to do it so and so. And it can be overt where people can say, you know, if you don't do this, we don't want you to be a part of this group anymore. I don't know if you have ever experienced that in high school where it is clear that if you don't go to the parties or if you don't watch this particular show, you're not a part of our group. And how you know you're not a part of the group? Because when you go to the group, that's all they're talking about. And you don't know what to say and you feel left out, right? Or if you don't have a particular kind of clothes to wear and you feel left out because everybody is wearing it, everybody is doing it. So that's how peer pressure can be felt. All right.
All right.
You had another comment on it?
No, but I believe Pastor had a question.
Yes.
Thank you for.
Thank you, Dr. Marine.
Yes, sir.
I, I don't know if it is because of the gender of the case study you did, why I am wanting to find out whether or not some of these issues, challenges, difficulties are gender specific, meaning one gender is more prone than another.
Good. That's a very good question. And, you know, I do have to apologize that I didn't really. Yeah, I just sort of thought of something and I probably could have thought of a boy also because the issue is there, but the working out of it or the how it is demonstrated might be different. So boys definitely experience peer pressure too, and they do have vulnerabilities, but it might be coming from a different level. For example, we know that at this age, a lot of boys experience peer pressure about getting involved in sexual relationships. And it is, you know, that the hormones are there. And then others might be bragging, and there's a sense of what a man should be looking like or doing. As I say that, I'm going to give you an example of something that I heard. And this is not even youth, like teenagers. One day I was passing a little group of school children. These children are about 9-year-old, 8 or 9-year-old. And a group of children, and one boy was teasing another boy, say him like the girl, you know. So that's like you, that say, you know, yeah man, you like her. Yeah man, you are you a feel girl that man. And you know the next thing out of his mouth, he said, you got breed her. I mean, I was shocked But this is to just show you what they have heard and what they know. And so there's obviously the pressure is beginning even then. Then we know that boys often get into smoking too because of peer pressure. When you ask a lot of boys, how did they start? Now, somebody at school, and the funny thing is, a lot of them would have heard from their parents or Sunday school or otherwise, this is not good. They have the information, but the pressure is there, identified with the group, and everybody else is doing it. And you know, you want to be a part of the group, you want to be accepted. And there's this great need to be accepted. As I say, one of the biggest psychological goals in this time of life is identity. Working out who I am, working through even your faith. You're moving from the point of where it was what your parents said to what I really believe. And people are getting more independent too. You might be moving from home to college, sometimes from Ocho Rios to Kingston, and you know, you have more independence, you're given more choices are available to you, and so on. All right, so yes, gender issues are there. Similar vulnerabilities, but the working out of it might be different.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Morgan. Do any one of our participants have another
All right.
question? If not, I will proceed
Let me just
with another one of mine.
All right. Go ahead.
Actually, there's a question from YouTube.
Uh-huh.
If you just allow,
yes, Pastor?
yeah, if you just allow one more question from me, Madam Moderator. Dr.
All right,
Ian,
go ahead.
could you say a little about the, well, for me, it seems to be a common phenomenon. Well, it seems to be a contemporary thing. Bullying.
Yes.
I think when I was growing up, it is probably what we used to call teasing.
Right.
And I don't know if it is just a perception I'm having, but it seems as if this generation of youngsters are more prone and vulnerable to this phenomenon than previous generations were. Is that a correct thing to say? And what you think might have contributed to it?
I agree with you. Definitely found that. I think when we were growing up, as I say, and I think I'm probably a little older than you, definitely we know about the teasing, we know about, you know, people trying to even fight, you know, start fights and so on at school. And I think one of the things then is that it was kind of limited, you know, to a small group. If you have a little fight, it might be the fight just in school there, and that's it, or whatever. Now, it seems as if it is much wider spread. For example, some of the cases that you hear about, again, the social media has a lot to do with it. It sort of just multiply things, you know? Somebody might be laughing at somebody because they did something, and they might put it on the Facebook or whatever, and you know, all of a sudden hundreds of people know that you, I don't know, you did whatever it was that was very embarrassing, and it is a big issue. And so there's the social media phenomenon that has caused a much exaggerated response. And then I think there's also a greater recognition of this bullying phenomenon. And because it is more highly recognized, it is also getting more attention. The other thing that may make people more vulnerable is that perhaps they do not have the kind of, what should I say, strengths or resilience that perhaps were there in earlier generations, right? And this probably has to do somewhat with families and, you know, sort of change of family structures and so on. Because I mean, in our days, for example, somebody trouble you, probably your big sister or your big brother would stand up and say, don't trouble her, don't touch her. And now it seems like there's more isolation, there's less of that. And the community, not what it used to be. School, there's a more fragmentation. And I think there are a lot of issues there that would lead to increased vulnerability. So it's a number of different issues. And I think, yes, I think you are correct in saying that it seems as if no, bullying is certainly different from what it used to be in days gone by.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Yes.
All right, thank you. We also have a question from Ashana.
Yes, good night. My question, well, I have a few, but I'll start with this one. Can social anxiety happen randomly? Like, it's not something that's persistent. For example, at random instant, maybe not random, but like at some social events, a person may be very uncomfortable, very antsy, feeling really out of place, very conscious of, everything that's happening and about to break down, the whole works of all the symptoms of having anxiety. But at other instances where there is like a social event, a lot of persons around, a big crowd or whatever, that person tends to be maybe bold. I'm not sure how that would be categorized. Could you help me with that, please?
Okay. So one of the things that we look at in making a diagnosis of an anxiety disorder is that this situation likely would have gone on for at least 6 months or more. And it causes intense discomfort to the person to the extent where it affects their ability to function. If it does that, it is usually an anxiety disorder. Now, having said so, remember we spoke about people having specific phobias. So, for example, somebody, say going into an airplane, for example, and that person became intensely anxious to the point where they just cannot settle down. Some people have to be taken off the flight or they have to make sure they take medication to go on. That is an anxiety disorder specific to the situation, and that may be more of a panic attack in the particular situation. If the person has repeated panic attacks, then it becomes a panic disorder. So going back to your question, it could be a mild social anxiety disorder, it could be moderate. But yes, you can have anxiety in different situations. But the particular characterization or categorization of it might be something that needs to be worked out based on how it happens, right? Because we just give labels to them based on certain criteria, but generally it could be in the group of anxiety disorders. And by the way, you can have a mixture. It's not just just one thing you can have. It can be a mixture.
Okay, thank you. I was doing some reading at some point and I came up on the term dysthymia or I'm not sure of the pronunciation.
Dysthymia, yes.
Dysthymia. Okay, thank you. And the 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 difference, it's saying that it's different from depression. However, it still gives like the same symptoms. So I'm not sure if it's like more intense or if it's, you know, less intense, or if it has like the same things, and how can you point it out if like after differentiating it?
Okay, so dysthymia is like a low-grade depression, and it is there all the time, most of the time. That's basically what it is. It doesn't really go into the high level that we would say, oh, this is a major depression. It's low grade and it's there. So it's kind of, you would say somebody always kind of somber, always kind of low on the mood, but it's not a change, you know, it's just been there all the time. That's all the person is. Whereas with a major depression, you notice a particular change. And usually we say for at least 2 weeks, this person has had this mood that has been down or angry or irritable intensely, to the point where all of these different issues are affected that we talk about: your sleep, your appetite, your energy, your outlook on life, and so on. Are
Okay,
you
so
getting it?
yes. All right. Last one. How
Mhm.
can I, as a young person,
Mhm.
try to guide someone after, like, if they're experiencing peer pressure, it's very obvious that they're out of their comfort zone, not doing what they as a person would do on their own. How can
Mhm.
I guide them out of that without getting any amount of, or some amount of negative reaction from that person?
Okay, so first of all, you can't predict that you won't get negative reaction from the person. But what you can do is you can make every effort to be empathetic. Remember, we talk about the empathy. So trying to understand, first of all, you know, listening, understanding what the person is experiencing, and trying to show the person that you care. In communicating your thoughts to such a person, and in general, it is usually good to focus on how you feel rather than making critical comments. In other words, instead of saying, you are acting stupid, you are, da, 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 you should say, I feel as if you're being put at risk, and our friendship probably is being affected when such and such happen, you know? So in other words, you're communicating to the person how you feel about the situation, and you're showing, putting that on the background of strengthening your relationship with the person, affirming whatever friendship you have, how you feel about them, and your concerns.
Okay, thank you
But
very much.
yeah, all right. So,
All right, a question from me, Dr.
yes,
Morgan. So on social media,
yes.
many of these mental health issues are glorified as though it is a pleasure to have them or it's a good thing. I don't want to downplay anyone's feelings because those can be very serious, but I'm not sure if it is a cry for help or persons are really just making a joke out of serious situations. What do you think about this?
Do you have an example to share?
Pardon?
Do you have an example to share?
Um, Many times I see on statuses or even on Instagram, I'm depressed
Okay,
or this has stressed me out, or even in our
yes,
everyday conversations
that
as
is true.
youth.
I'm
With depressing,
traumatized.
with depressed, me can't take this no more, me can't bother. But
Yes,
it's said in such a joking manner that
yes,
it's
that is
kind of
true.
hard to take them serious, even though
That
as
is
students or as youth, we know that life can get very hard, especially in this day and age. but I'm kind of concerned. Should I be taking it seriously or are they just joking around?
You know, I think you've raised a very important point. And in this age of social media, I agree that there's a lot of language out there, you know, that people just throw around, you know. And interestingly too, as somebody said recently, everybody has a platform. Everybody is an expert. And so people are making their own diagnoses. They go to Google and, you know, people are saying, I have this, I have that, and so on. So I think that certainly colors, you know, what we see. But there is, therefore, as you mentioned, the negative side, there is the possibility of desensitizing all of these that are pretty serious issues and taking them mildly. And so there is what is needed in terms of responsibility. Even as we communicate, even social media and even in the printed media, people need to be very responsible in how they communicate. It is one of the reasons, for example, why we're very careful on how suicide, for example, is reported, because you don't want to glamorize it and make it seem like something that somebody did because they are brave, and next thing you know, other people are copying it. Or, you know, if you have a depression, this is going to make you come out, you know, as somebody that people are going to look at. Yes, so there is that issue. And I think, as I said, part of it is just everybody having the platform that they can talk, and everybody has an audience and everybody has something to say. But definitely we need to be more responsible. We need to be more sensitive. And some of these things can be serious issues. And on the other hand, it is possible that some people do want help and they don't know how to get help. So it is always good to look again and see what is actually happening. All right. But it's a concern. All right, let me just wrap up this and then we can ask some. So we're talking about emotional intelligence, and being aware of your feelings is very important. You know, a lot of times we don't stop to think about how we feel. And I find that one of the things that we have in Jamaica, we don't have a lot of emotional literacy. So people will just say, I feel a way, you make me feel a way. And people will, you know, even fight because they feel a way. So one of the things that we need to do is to be able to attach names to our emotions. Even as children, children need to know when I feel angry, or when I feel sad, or when I feel happy, and under what conditions I feel this. And then now, when you feel that way, you need to learn to manage it. This is what I do. So this is just a little exercise that I can send to you, that you can share with others. And it's not something that I did, I found it on the internet, and it's about emotional self-awareness. And you can, in your journal, just practice to put a name to your emotions so that you're more aware of how you're feeling and when you're feeling this way. And feelings are supposed to inform you so that you can act. If you're feeling uncertain, if you're feeling anxious, it is an indication that something might need attention. There's a whole matter of, am I assertive? And you know, assertiveness is to express your wishes and belief in a positive way. It doesn't mean to be aggressive. And assertive doesn't mean that you're not a Christian or that you're not a meek person. Jesus was quite assertive. And if assertiveness is too little, you can become a doormat. If it is too high, you can become bossy. All right, so I'm just throwing out all these things. I will send them to you. Anger, that's another emotional state that we need to learn to manage. What do people do when they get angry? Are they destructive in their anger? The Bible tells us be angry and sin not, recognizing that we will get angry from time to time. But learning to manage your emotion is one of the skills of emotional intelligence. So you guys can take this and write down some good ways to deal with your anger and practice it. Important to set goals that you can. I thought this was interesting. Confidence exam. And this is just, again, scoring yourself. How to see what is your level of confidence. And it asks questions like, am I satisfied with myself? I am happy with the way I look. I am pleased with my relationships. I can accept criticism without getting upset. I keep trying when things don't go my way. I'm glad for others when good things happen. I'm willing to seek help if I need it. I enjoy the challenge of trying new things. I feel comfortable meeting new people, and I set goals and expectations for myself. These are things that you can check yourself on. Things are not always what they seem. Sometimes you have to look back and say, what was it that happened, in a situation that caused some amount of discomfort, or it wasn't what you thought it would be. You could look back and check it out, say the truth about the situation. What was the triggering event? How did you incorrectly evaluate the situation? What was your response? The truth about what was going on and having a healthy response. And this is just a little thing about understanding your emotions. Then stress, we all talk about stress, especially at this COVID time. And just to remind you that there are various ways in which stress can be manifested. Stress response is something, again, that happens to us whenever we come upon a situation that we think, our perception is that it is beyond what we can cope. And then you begin to get stress response. It can be physical, like headaches, stomachache, neck stiffness, sleeping problem, breathing rapidly, loss of appetite, or overeating. Emotional can be mood changes, poor concentration, anxiety, crying, racing thoughts, depression, and behavioral, nail biting, foot tapping, grinding teeth, and some people resort to using medications, alcohol, or smoking, which are unhealthy choices. The fact is that stress is something that you will experience. The important thing is to manage it appropriately. So you recognize it, you can decrease the triggers. If you're taking on too much, you can talk about it, you can pray, meditate. Journaling is a very good thing. Exercise, deep breathing, slow down, take a break, look at hobbies, eat well. Laughter is a good medicine. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing now and we can continue to talk. All right. So I've thrown a lot of things at you and I can pass it on to Onelia so you can look at them some more. But overall, what we're saying is that there are lots of vulnerabilities out there, and it's good for you to have the knowledge, it's good for you to be aware, and it's good for you to learn how to deal with them. So back to you, Onelia. Any more questions?
Thank you, Dr. Irons Morgan.
You're
Does
welcome.
anyone have any questions?
If none, I will proceed with my own. So many elders or parents or adults are stuck in this era of, and I quote, children must be seen and not heard. But things and times have changed. We face real issues and vulnerabilities, and we have access to so much information that if they refuse to listen, we can source information on our own. That may not always be in our best interest. How can we get them to hear us out?
Wow. I think perhaps it would be situations like this, Onelia, that children must be seen and not heard is definitely something that should never have been. It is so important to listen to people, to know what they're thinking, to know what they're feeling, and we should be encouraging this kind of expression. Perhaps one of the things that may cause people to say that kind of thing is it being disrespectful, the communication, you know? So perhaps if we can push the importance of people learning to communicate in a respectful manner, then that is something desirable. And that is something that young people and others can learn to do, to communicate with love and respect. And of course, I think, just parents, it is said that parenting is the hardest job, and you don't get lessons, and you don't get prepared for it. And there's no doubt that different children bring different challenges to a parents. So parents need help too. So in whatever way parents can get help, whether church or parent teachers association or whatever it is, it's so important for them to get the help that they need. And if children are caught in a situation where they do not feel like they are being listened to, then it is important for them to be directed to the appropriate place where they can be listened to. Because I know you're saying that this is one of the things that make them vulnerable, and they may go to the wrong place to be listened to, right? But we would want them to go to perhaps their teachers or their Sunday school teachers, or pastor or good friends, and also other family members. Sometimes in the extended family, you might have an auntie or an aunt or a grandparent or a godmother or godfather or a friend of the family who might be willing to listen.
Okay, thank you. As you mentioned, communication, I came up with an idea that I think should be implemented in our education system, especially in our guidance or home and family life education programs, where we need to learn to write.
Yes.
So, for example, describe how you feel when you're angry.
Yes.
Describe how you feel when you're sad or when you're happy. Like, it will promote this system of communication, putting your feelings into words. And I think if we got that at the grassroots level, at school, from your young,
Right.
it will prevent so many issues that occur in today's society, because persons will be able to communicate and to consider other person's feelings and to hear other person's point of view, to prevent all this violence that's happening in our community today.
Very important. That's a part of the whole emotional intelligence that I was talking about. The first step, being aware of your feelings. It is not something that we promote a lot. We do not allow. If you notice, sometimes it happens now still, and in my time growing up, little boys, for example, boys are crying, and they are told to stop in eyes. Yeah, you think you're a girl pitney, or you're so sissy, stop cry. So they're not allowed to express feelings of anger and sadness. And also in other situation, people, the negative feelings are shunned, as if you are not supposed to feel that way, instead of your feelings being validated. So there's a lot of lack of emotional literacy and intelligence, and I agree with you that we should encourage people to communicate about their feelings. It helps. Releasing negative feelings helps. You don't keep it inside and it affects you. It helps to talk about it, helps to share, and it helps to learn how to manage it.
Thank you, Dr. Ayers-Morgan. And now we'll take one more question. Is there any other question from the youth or from parents? Any questions or comments?
One final question from me. Dr. Irons, you did projected a list of persons to whom youngsters could refer, in their times of crisis. And I think, except for for friends, they were all authority figures. I know we are living in an environment where authority is now itself under serious interrogation. The extent to which even social media has been used to undermine trust in institutions and in authority. How you think this is impacting youngsters in their moments of crisis to really turn, to where help can be found?
Well, first of all, Reverend Hemmings, I'm not sure. What should I say? In other words, some of the instances where authority has been proven to be at fault are true. That's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
There, and I think it is good for people to know and for youngsters to know that not everyone who wears an authority hat is to be trusted.
Right.
And they need to be, they need to be equipped with this information. And so they need to know how to, for example, we talk about healthy boundaries, how to protect themselves. They need to know how to identify if this person is not a healthy situation.
Right.
If they go into a taxi, for example, and the taxi man start to ask them certain things, you have a boyfriend, or you want to go somewhere or whatever, or you want some money. People need to know that this doesn't sound right. Or if even, God forbid, the pastor should, because we've had situation unfortunately like that.
Right.
So there are such situations with that, giving the people a blanket to say, in fact, I put out the things, but I say, boy, all of these have positives and negatives.
Right.
We know that when you go to friends often don't have the knowledge, and sometimes they're, holding secret what should not be secret. So what we're saying is that prayerfully, go out there and ask, and some of the good things that, you might notice if somebody is being honest and transparent with you, if you feel safe with that person, if you do not feel threatened in any way, then that might be a good person. Whatever advice you're getting should, of course, line up with what God's word says. It should not be in contradiction to any of that. Persons who are healthy helpers will be willing for you to get help from other people who you may need to get help from. If it is a case where you need, medical or psychological or specialized help, they would not stop you. They would encourage you to do that.
Right.
So these are some of the issues. And we do want, young people to be aware and to be equipped with knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Pastor and Dr. Morgan. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude towards you, Dr. Morgan, for taking the time to grace us with such vital information and an excellent presentation. I'm certain that we all who are in attendance will depart from this meeting much wiser than we came. If you would like to add anything here, you can go ahead.
Well, I would just like to say thank you for having me, and that I am, very, very impressed by how you, Onelia, and your team, how you have conducted yourselves. It gives me a lot of hope for the future. And, and I want to congratulate Pastor and Mrs. Hemmings on the work that they're doing. And just want to wish you all the best and, encourage you as young people. It's a difficult time, but if you have accepted the Lord as your personal Savior, if you're a Christian, you have made the most important choice. And, I just want to encourage you to continue to grow as a Christian. Remember that God has a plan for your life, and it's the best plan. And no matter what the world seems to be offering out there, what level of excitement, it is not better than what God's plan is for your life. So to live your best life, to fulfill your purpose, stay in God's plan. And God will provide for you. He'll never leave you nor forsake you.
Okay, on that note, it is our pleasure to welcome you as a church family, and we pray for God's richest blessing upon you and your family. Do have a marvelous evening, everyone. Keep safe, look out for others, and the Lord bless and keep you all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Special, for there's no other who's just like you. Special, you are. God made you special. God made you so special, for there's no other who's just like you. Special you are. For he took the time to breathe into your heart and mind an identity. Your kind of style sets you apart. Be yourself. It's fine. It's all God's design. God made you special. God made you special, for the